way so we keep things on time. We are expecting some more people to join in. We're also recording this session so that people can watch it back as a number of people register and then watch it back later on when they've got free time. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Shaun. I'm the CEO of the Tourism Industry Council here in South Australia. Before we get underway, I'd like to acknowledge that currently myself and our guest that I'll introduce shortly, Michael, on the lands of the Kaurna people. There's different smattering of people that we have online in different lands, but obviously incredibly important to acknowledge our First Nations people, pay respect to elders past, present, and recognise their connection to land over many thousands of years. Also, like to acknowledge that at TiCSA we aim to make our spaces, and this in conversation today is one of those spaces, very inclusive, and we seek to provide opportunity for all people to be able to engage in the information and the programs that we deliver. Our In Conversation series, which you're all participating in today, is a fantastic short webinar series that we've had going for a few years now, which is all about connecting people with opportunity. That's what we love doing at TiCSA, and in particular, business development opportunity. And really pleased with the discussion that we're going to have today, and hopefully all of you will see some sort of opportunity to connect your business and or your organisation to what's happening. I'll be asking a number of questions that we, as we move through the session. I'd ask that you'll keep your microphones on mute, but also welcome people asking questions. But to do that, please just pop it into the chat so that we can, and as those questions pop up, we'll endeavour to ask and answer those questions. To now get into our session, really pleased and excited to learn more about the Chihuly expedition and what's been happening at the Adelaide Botanic Gardens. No doubt you've all heard lots about it, and some of you I know have actively participated in it, particularly the Jam Factory guys that are joining us today as well. So it's a great opportunity to unpack and learn a little bit more about what's, apart from the huge numbers and the excitement and energy that's coming out of the Botanic Gardens at the moment. It's a bit of an opportunity to look behind the curtain and see what's happening. So I'm now really delighted to introduce our special guest, Michael Harvey, the Director of the Botanic Gardens, who will be our expert speaker with all things informative for industry and our stakeholders online today. So Michael, thank you for joining us. Can I please throw to you, and can you give us a bit of an overview about who you are, the Botanic Gardens, and maybe just touch on Chihuly?
Sure, thanks, and thanks for the introduction, and welcome. Absolutely lovely to be here. It's I know the TiCSA has been a very enthusiastic partner for us throughout this project, and it kind of reflects the role of organisations such as ours as being an absolutely fundamental part of the tourism ecosystem of a city. So I'm the director of the Botanic Gardens, so it's the full title is the Botanic Gardens and State Herbarium of South Australia, which really reflects our scientific work and our collections, as well as the public work that we do. So really we have kind of three major arms in the Botanic Gardens. There's the gardens itself, which incorporates our living collection and our sites, which includes the Adelaide Botanic Garden, Mount Lofty Botanic Garden, Watunga Botanic Garden, and Botanic Park. And then there's our preserved collection in the State Herbarium, which is over 1 million specimens of preserved plants gathered over more than 100 years. And that in itself is a fantastic record of the state's and indeed Australia's flora. And also then we're home to the Seed Conservation Centre of South Australia, which is essentially part of a national network of centres that collect viable seed material and preserve that in a way that can be regerminated and regrown in the event of ecological disaster or loss of species. So it's a complex organisation, and it's probably of a piece with the sort of the major collecting institutions on North Terrace. We have ourselves, we have the museum, we have the gallery, we have the library, and those are sort of all major state-supported institutions which bring together a collecting function and a very, very significant visitor function. And I came to this role after more than 20 years of working in the museum sector, mainly in science and natural history museums. So I've been more indoors than outdoors, although my last job was at the Australian National Maritime Museum, where we had a waterfront site with a number of historic vessels. So moving to the Botanic Gardens was simply, a blatant effort to get myself more out into the open air than I could achieve at the Maritime Museum.
Oh, that's fantastic, Michael. It's great to hear the diversity and the complexity of the Botanic Gardens and the seed collection and the collection of flora and all that. I don't think we appreciate that until we sort of hear about it from you. How many hectares is under your care and control? Do you know the size of your?
I broadly do. The Adelaide Botanic Gardens is about 45 hectares, so it's quite big for a city botanic gardens. The Mount Lofty Garden is double that, so it comes close to 100 hectares. And then Wottunga Botanic Garden and Botanic Park are both smaller sites. They sit in the sort of 20 to 30 hectare range, but it's a sizable chunk of land. And of course, with all of those sites, including Botanic Park, have a botanical collection. There's an arboretum at the park, which essentially is a significant tree collection. And of course, it's also home to 45,000 plus fruit bats. So it's a dynamic site in and of itself. But Mount Lofty, Wottunga and Adelaide have all got a very substantial living collection that reflects the different climatic and soil characteristics of those sites.
Yeah, fascinating. Chihuly, let's drill into Chihuly. So why did you go after an exhibition like Chihuly? Maybe just the why before we talk about the what. Why?
Yeah.
It's obviously something I don't think that's ever been considered before. It's something out of the box, literally, and metaphorically and physically, as it was shipped over. But yeah, tell us the why.
Really, yeah, it's the most fundamental question. So it in many ways represents a really natural progression from a series of projects the garden's been involved with for many years from before I started, which is essentially a recognition that even though we're a free entry site, very accessible, very beautiful, and therefore very attractive, we're in a world where you've got to work hard for people's attention. And it's something that all the major institutions like museums and galleries and gardens, it's easy to slip into, a comfort of repeat visitors and forget that actually you need to work hard to get people's attention and to bring new visitors to your site. And there's been research in the museum sector, and I suspect it's absolutely true of gardens as well, that if you're a regular museum goer when you're a child, and if your family and parents bring you to a museum, you've got a comfort and a naturalness with that site that then makes you likely to be a museum goer for the rest of your life. And I think it's incumbent on us in museums, galleries and gardens that we really reach out to new audiences and bring people in. Family audiences are hugely important, but all audiences, to essentially make an investment in the future generation of botanic gardens by investing in future generations of audiences. And that means doing dramatic projects that will bring people in. So we've built, obviously working with Illuminate Adelaide, a series of night activations in the gardens to knit the gardens into what is a very significant urban festival. We have in the past been part of the Fringe. We've held theatrical performances in the gardens. And I really need to emphasize, it's not just about using the gardens as a venue. It's about each of these things work because they sit in the landscape and invite people to explore the gardens as well as the thing you're seeing. And Chihuly does that at a kind of on steroids. And we're certainly not the first botanic garden to have hosted a Chihuly show. In fact, because of Dale's personal interest in nature and in gardens, and actually particularly in botanic gardens, he and his team have built a series of botanic gardens exhibitions over 20 years, primarily in the States. It's unusual for them to ship their major garden shows internationally, but they have done two presentations of their gardens exhibitions at Kew Gardens in London. And then in 2021, they took one of their exhibitions to Gardens by the Bay in Singapore. So we knew they were open to international display, and I was lucky enough to have seen the Kew show in 2005. And I was able to see firsthand the very dramatic effect it had on audiences' interest in the gardens. It brought a new audience to the gardens, but it also invited that audience to explore the gardens in totality, not simply go from artwork to artwork. And so for us, it was about how can we do something dramatic that will really put the gardens in the cultural conversation in the life of the city, and very much in the tourist conversation. So absolutely fundamental to the project was a recognition that it would drive an economic benefit to Adelaide because it would attract significant tourist numbers.
Yeah, that's great. And just a supplementary to that. So you talked about the why in terms of visitors. What about why in terms of stakeholders, engagement with the Botanic Gardens? I know you've got a wonderful, strong relationship with the jam factory.
Yeah.
Maybe give us a little touch on what that looks like.
Yeah, and look, when I was talking about the why in terms of visitors, I talked about changing our perceptions and our relationships with the city, and everything we do that's around that community engagement and public engagement piece, we essentially do in collaboration. And so projects like this are fantastic at driving new collaborations, which in turn will stand us in great stead for many years. And the first two of those collaborations really were Jam Factory and the South Australian Tourism Commission. That we had in Jam Factory an organisation which had a track record of working with the Chihuly studio. They hosted a Chihuly exhibition 24 years ago. And a group of people that are highly connected to the glass art scene in Adelaide, which is a centre of excellence. Adelaide and Canberra are really Australia's two key centres of excellence in that space. And people that were extraordinarily good at working out how to leverage, promote, retail art. And so, the team at Jam Factory, led by Brian Parks, the director there, were sort of among the first phone calls when we were conceiving of the project, because having that expertise, it was expertise that we didn't have in the Botanic Gardens. So working with partners gives you access to a knowledge base that you don't have. And similarly with the South Australian Tourism Commission, because absolutely the project is about bringing tourists to South Australia, SATC, they will always run an interstate marketing campaign better than ever we could. So we just don't have the track record of doing that. So working with SATC and having them lead on bringing people from outside the state, while we focused on our connections inside the state and the community here, was two really early and important relationships. But then beyond that, through the project, we've worked with a range of partners and sponsors to deliver something really special, both in terms of suppliers. We've worked with companies such as Simple, the design company, and Village Gate, who've worked with us and as contractors, but has also done significant pro bono work to kind of stretch our dollars as far as they possibly could and make something that was truly excellent. So yeah, we've had support from right across the community, which has been wonderful.
Yeah, that's excellent. It's great to hear that you've worked so closely with SATC, and I'm sure they've really enjoyed the experience. So Chihuly, tell us a little bit. Maybe not everyone has the full background on. You've touched on it a little bit. Maybe give us a little bit more about why Chihuly is so special.
Yeah, sure. So Dale Chihuly is now in his 80s, and he's got an absolutely massive international career as absolutely the preeminent glass artist and glass art entrepreneur in the world. If you Google glass artist, his name comes up first. And he's built a practice which is very much, again, built on collaboration, built on teamwork, built on working with other artists and other organizations. And he creates these absolutely gorgeous glass pieces that are anarchic, playful, joyful, organic, and on a whole variety of scales. So he's done projects in galleries and in museums, but he's also done epic outdoor projects, not just in Botanic Gardens, but across whole cities. And so this practice that he's built is one that lends itself extraordinarily well to outdoor display. And glass is a beautiful medium to work with. It responds fantastically to light. It's more robust than it looks, but it looks incredibly fragile and delicate. So there's almost a wonder at what the team are able to achieve with the sculptures that they create. And then this series of projects where they've worked with the world's botanic gardens to place those works in a landscape and work with the historic buildings, in many cases glass buildings, to create something which is a true dialogue between the art and the garden. And so we were very inspired by that whole sequence of projects. And some of the greatest botanic gardens in the world, I've mentioned Kew in Singapore, but New York and Chicago botanic gardens, they've worked at gardens of lots of different scales. And that's meant they're very adept at working with a botanic garden, being sensitive to the needs of a garden, which a botanic garden needs to be carefully maintained and cared for, and working with garden teams to create something which, as I say, is this wonderful relationship between art and garden. And across the 20-year history of these projects, they all seem to capture an audience. They do capture people's attention, and there is a sense of wonder about them. And so the business side of the director brain will look at the visitor figures and go, yeah, we could totally work with that. And so, and we've seen exactly that. We've seen, extraordinary public response to the exhibition here in Adelaide, which is of a piece with, and indeed, in some instances, more dramatic than has been seen at other gardens projects around the world.
So yeah, that's my next question. So what is the impact so far? You obviously got counters at the gate. You've got ticketed nighttime events. Can you give us give us a few numbers in terms of visitation?
For
Maybe
sure.
what that looks like in terms of normal visitation compared to current visitation?
So on Sunday last week, we hit the halfway point of the exhibition. We have the exhibition here for 7 months, and we're now 3.5 months. Midway through January is the midpoint. So our halfway figures are extraordinarily positive. We would normally see about 1 million visitors a year in the Botanic Gardens, which emphasises its role as an absolutely major visitor draw card in the city. But in the 3.5 months we've had the Chihuly exhibition here, we've seen well in excess of 700,000 visitors. So we're on track to do our annual visitation inside the first 2/3 of the exhibition, which is just astonishing. And so, and as you say, that's measured with gate counters. So that's visits. That's a mix of people coming once and people coming every day. So it's the number of people that walk through our gates.
Yeah.
And so that's just extraordinary to see. I think our record for the greatest single day of visitation in the gardens before we did Chihuly was when we had the corpse flower plant. And we saw a day where we had 9,000 visitors in a single day. And we broke 10,000 visitors, I think, 7 times in the first fortnight of Chihuly. And our new visitor record in a day sits over 15,000 visitors. So we're rewriting our record books for visitation almost every week. And as you've said, we're a free entry site. We're free entry by legislation, which I think, again, is hugely important. I've got Botanic Gardens directors around the world absolutely gobsmacked that we're offering a Chihuly exhibition for free entry, because that's just not the way that the American and UK gardens work. Kew and those American gardens do have entry charges to them. So we have extended the project with some ticketed events, a special exhibition in our conservatory, and a night program. And the night program was a really important part of the whole project, because we were funded to do this, being free entry. Normally you pay for a Chihuly show by ticket sales. That option wasn't open to us. So we were fortunate enough to be able to make a case to and get support from the State Major Events Fund. And a big part of that case was the fact that we were going to be open at night. We were going to be contributing to the nighttime economy of the city. And so the night program is an absolutely fundamental part of the project. And we've seen over 60,000 tickets sold for Chihuly nights. And again, that's a terrific.
What was your target? What was your target, Michael?
We're close to our target for the whole run now. So we have. Yeah. It was an experiment for us to charge at night for something that visitors could see for free during the day, and it's a testament to the extraordinary word of mouth that Chihuly Nights has given us. But yeah, I was hoping we might see 50 or 60,000 tickets sold for the night program of people who are sufficiently keen. But to be there, this early in the run is extraordinary. In fact, just last week, we took the decision that we've been opening 3 nights a week, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays. And we always said, once we start to sell out, we may need to extend. And through January, we've started to see that. We've started to see sellouts of our Thursdays, Fridays and Saturdays. So we've now opened up ticket sales on Sundays as well. And I think we took that decision last Monday. We put tickets on sales for the Sunday on Wednesday, and we sold out on Sunday. So we'll be running on Sundays for the rest of the run now. And now we may see a post-school holidays downturn in that, but I think once you start, you open it up, you take bookings. It was just we've set up our procedures now, so no, we'll be running on Sundays right the way through.
Wow, that's wonderful. That's congratulations. And obviously, you, like you said, you have had nighttime ticketed events there previously, so it's something you have done before, and it's significantly stronger than what you thought based on previous experience.
Yeah, and look, we in many ways, as I said, this is a culmination of a bunch of things. So we had run our night programs through our partnership with Illuminate Adelaide, and in that case, Illuminate effectively was the producer, and they were managing the site. In this case, we've taken what we've learned from working with Illuminate and we've applied that to running the site ourselves. Last summer, we held the Wildlife Photographer of the Year exhibition in the Bicentennial Conservatory from the Natural History Museum in London. That sold 20,000 tickets over the course of the summer, and we were really chuffed with that. So to have 30,000 tickets sold for In Full Colour Dale Chihuly, again, halfway through our run, we will double what we did for Wildlife Photographer of the Year there as well. So but it has been about, this project has extended a lot of things we'd been playing with already.
Yeah. And so I'm keen, can you break it down? And I know you have engaged a research company, but I'm not sure exactly where that's at. So a lot of it's counters, some of it's ticketed, and you talked about audiences. What is your, who is coming? You talk about families. Can you break down the visitation even by, geographic and maybe by some of those social situations as well that people are visiting in?
We can, yes. So we are able to record the size of groups people are visiting in, where they're coming from. We're seeing, and again, it's interesting because obviously when you're doing market research, we're not interviewing 700,000 people. We're interviewing samples of those. So we have sample interviews during the day and at night, and we are also collecting postcode information when people buy their tickets. So the postcode information indicated that at least 15% of ticket sales were coming from interstate. But interestingly, when we've done the visitor sampling, we're seeing that number is higher. It's closer to 25 to 30%. And that probably indicates the postcode is the ticket sale. So one person buying a ticket, but somebody from interstate might actually be buying 4 tickets. One transaction will go down as that's the postcode record. So we actually think that the estimate is likely to be higher. So we're estimating somewhere between 25 and 30% of our visitors.
And that feels like Michael, if I could.
Yeah.
Well, and that feels like it's the visitor and friends marker, the VFR marker that we would say in the tourism space. So that Auntie Mavis and Uncle Bob are visiting from Victoria. Family member buys tickets here, takes them and shows them part of Adelaide, which is 100%. Wonderful.
Yep. And look, that's exactly what I did. I bought tickets for all my family in Sydney. Went down as my transaction, but actually of the 8 people coming along, I mean, I get in free because I'm the director, but of the 7 people coming along, they'll all read as from Adelaide, but in fact, they're all from Sydney. And I think there's a bit of that going on. So this is why it's really important to validate your data with more than one source. So our sampling data and our interview data is allowing us to check what our ticket data is really telling us. What is even more interesting, and I'm very excited about this, and I only got this data literally on Wednesday, last week, is that when we've asked people, what was your main reason for visiting the gardens today? Of the people who cited Chihuly as the main reason for visiting, because there's still plenty of people that just like a day out in the gardens and won't necessarily cite Chihuly as this is why I'm here today. But of the people who cited Chihuly as the main reason for their visit, 41% of them were tourists. So
Wow.
what that's indicating is the tourists are absolutely targeting Chihuly as the thing to do. And obviously running over 7 months, there's an interesting difference between Chihuly and the other major events that we hold in South Australia. A lot of those are sporting events or even theatre events that run over a shorter period of time. A 7-month run is very unusual. Tour Down Under is a couple of weeks. The Gather Round is a short period of time. The motor race is a short period of time. And this is running across all of those things. So I think we're obviously picking up tourists who've come here for Tour Down Under, but who are going to then add a day to their trip and spend that in the gardens. And so I think the ecosystem of events in Adelaide is really starting to play with each other through Chihuly, which I really like. And thanks to, again, support from SATC and others, we've been able to actually actively promote Chihuly. So we had sponsorship from BMW, who have dressed a couple of BMWs in Chihuly livery, and we parked one of those at the motor race and had a Chihuly promotion there. We will have had Chihuly promotion right at the front door of all of these events. So we're really working hard to reach out to the tourists and make sure they're aware of this and that they come to it.
Yeah, fantastic. So the tourism industry, so obviously you're working with tourism industry partners,
Yep.
IHG, there's displays and hotel lobbies, and the feedback we get is really positive.
Yep.
Can you speak a little bit about industry relationships with tourism operators and how that's going? And keen to sort of we've got, we're halfway through our conversation today, so keen to, tease that out a little bit more, and then see if there's opportunity for operators to engage with you and your team.
Yeah, look, really good point. And again, another key partner for us is AIDA, the Adelaide Economic Development Agency. And through them, we've been working with local businesses in South Australia. And so on their website, there's if you look up the AIDA website, Adelaide Celebrates Glass, the city trail. Basically, businesses can register and through AIDA and get in touch with us and have a conversation about, well, what can be done at different sites around the city to co-promote. So we've got, for example, we've got restaurants that are actually co-promoting Chihuly, and we're offering discount tickets for patrons of those restaurants and vice versa. So we're negotiating through the Economic Development Agency, who've obviously got the connections with those businesses and act as a fantastic contact point, because obviously it's very difficult for a small team here in the gardens to be reaching out again and again to many businesses. So AIDA have helped us with that. And so you will see there are bookshops that are doing displays of Chihuly books. There are ways of essentially co-promoting and cross-promoting what a business does. And so, yeah, if you have a look at the AIDA website and look at the trail, you've actually got a map there that shows all of the different places that have got a connection to Chihuly. And as I emphasised, we're halfway through the run, and this project isn't finished when we open it; it's finished when we close it. So between now and the 29th of April, we're absolutely interested in other suggestions as well.
Brilliant. And so are you able to, obviously you've got a small team, your resources are totally stretched. Are you able to provide promotional material to businesses that want to promote, what's happening on their website? Do you have digital assets or things like that people can use?
Yeah, absolutely we do. And in fact, part of that city trail was the creation of exactly those kinds of materials. So we've got digital assets. There are some physical assets as well. So yeah, it's certainly something we're more than happy to help with. And the fact that we've got this, and again, it's as a sidebar, it's an interesting creative process, because we created a dedicated brand for Chihuly in Adelaide, which you'll see on all of the Chihuly livery around the place. That was created by a local design company who melded images of the Chihuly glasswork with silhouettes of the iconic palm house from the garden to create a kind of a Chihuly in Adelaide brand, which we're using both in promotional material and in merchandise. And we've had extraordinarily positive feedback from the Chihuly studio. Obviously, when you create a brand like that, you need to do so in collaboration and with the full permission of the studio, because you're working with their intellectual property and their artists' rights. But they've been blown away by the quality of work carried out in Adelaide by Simple and by Village Gate. to realise that. And yeah, it's just been terrific to see. And even the fact that our retail shop in the Museum of Economic Botany was fitted out by the team at Jam Factory. The Chihuly studio were thrilled with the professionalism and the class with which that was delivered as well. So actually having local creatives demonstrating what they can do, but on a global stage, is really positive.
It sounds amazing. And so are we able to provide contact details of which we'll send a follow-up email to everyone? Is there obviously we'll provide a link to the AIDA website,
Yep.
and what you've just discussed there. And if possible, I'd love to provide a link to either someone or some assets that you have online that people can access.
Yeah, I can follow up with providing you with links to the websites, but also we are, as part of our survey, we're not just surveying our visitors, we are also talking to local businesses about the impact that the projects had on them. So I'll also provide the link to that sentiment survey for local businesses as well. We would love to hear where particularly, are you seeing people that are coming in mentioning Chihuly or asking about it? I know we've had really positive feedback from the restaurant sector at the East End, where there's a trail of people moving back and forth between the Varden Avenue precinct and the Rundle Street precinct and the gardens. So, the idea of dinner and Chihuly is a thing, and that's absolutely helping out. We've also had feedback from food and beverage outlets right across the city that they're seeing people talking about or asking about Chihuly, and so hopefully we absolutely are seeing that economic benefit that was part of the vision of the project from the very outset. And that's the major success measure, that actually, the gardens gets loads of visitors, but actually the city get loads of businesses, that the zoo see an uptick in visitation because they're adjacent to us, that that we're able to feed back to government and say, look, when you invest in a major cultural project at a public access site, it's actually got knock-on effects right across the city.
Yeah, which is so wonderful. And it's it's amazing. I know I went to the wine centre myself for lunch a few weeks back, and I couldn't find a seat. It was just crazy. There was people everywhere. If anyone has any comments or questions, please pop them into the chat. We're really keen if anyone has anything that they'd like to express, please do that. I might just, there's so many questions that I have, Michael. I guess what I sort of want to move towards, you sort of given us the background on what you've given with just wondering, where do you see the future? That obviously, as you said, this has been a long-term priority.
Yep.
Thank you for that. So Michael's just put into the chat the survey.
I wonder if this link will work as well.
Put the link on that. So you've had a program of work over many years about building new audiences. It's going to be pretty hard to back up after Chihuly. What's next?
Yeah, so it's when you do a generational project, and that's what this one is. The two scariest words are what's next. And I guess to be clear and to manage expectations, this was a one in many years project. We got significant injection of funds from state major events, and so I suspect we won't be doing something of this scale for another couple of years. However, what it has done is it's given us a whole bunch of new learning about how to do projects like this. So I would absolutely see us being similarly outward looking and looking for projects that can potentially have the same effect again that we can do in a few years, for which again we would be building a case for support and hoping to create a vision as equally compelling as Chihuly. So we do have some ideas that we're beginning to work on. But actually, on a more sort of business as usual level, we are bringing the very successful Wildlife Photographer of the Year back from the Natural History Museum next summer, but we will be far smarter about how we leverage that off the back of what we've learned from Chihuly. And it could well be that we do see a summer nights program, given the success we've had with Chihuly nights. People just love being in the gardens at night. So we may also think about how we can continue to contribute to the 24-hour economy or the nighttime economy by creating a night event, maybe not 4 nights a week for 7 months, but certainly in that summer period where you've got light late into the evening. The idea of creating a music and art evening thing in the gardens could be something we explore. But also, this was a major collaborative project where we were really very much the lead agency, that we worked with all of our other partners, but it was one that we really took on as the project lead and the deliverer of the project. And it could be that we see projects at some of the other places that we can become a partner on, and we can become, the equivalent of what Jam Factory has done for us for another organisation that's taking a lead on a project that we can then add value through the gardens. So we're also really open to how we can magnify other projects as well. And I think that spirit of collaboration is going to be part of it. So the answer to what's next is something big in a few years' time when we can build another case and get more support, but a whole bunch of incremental improvements to the way we do things and the way we engage moving forward.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Because obviously, as you said, one of the whys was about new audiences. And yes, you've had a new audience come through, but how do you make them sticky? How do you make them want to continue to connect and not just go, oh, well, that was nice, but I'll just forget about it now. And obviously, you're looking at product development opportunities to make sure that those new audiences can continue to connect with, with the precinct and with your partners, which it's really exciting to hear that as successful as Chihuly has been, that you're really positive about making sure that energy and effort is put into doing new things, not just go back to status quo. And I think that's what industry really, the best tourism businesses out there, they're really keen to work with partners like that.
Yeah, look, I think that's absolutely right. So what I would signal is that we're really open to partnership proposals, all of which we look at and work out, well, is this one for us? Can it work? But we've seen now what really effective collaboration can do, and are absolutely keen to do more of it.
And we've just got a comment here from Julia, Adelaide Style Accommodation, just saying that fabulous event by day and night, highly recommended. We have people, we talk about Chihuly exhibition and people extend stays and put on their to-do list when they're here. Have you got any numbers on international visitors, is Julie's question.
We do have some preliminary numbers from our surveys. Yes, let me, I'll see if I can look them up there. Obviously, local is the biggest, then interstate, then international. So we're looking at, from the general visitor survey, the people that, again, cite Chihuly is the reason for coming, and indeed of all visitors, we're looking at about 2% international visitors, which feels to me lower than what I'm seeing anecdotally. When I see people and talk to people around the gardens, I'm actually getting a lot of different accents, and there are people coming internationally, but the visitor numbers tell us 2%. And look, the numbers are always going to be dominated by Adelaideans because we're free entry, and so they're repeat visiting. Your tourists and your internationals are coming once, but we are getting so many repeat visitors that the sheer volume of people coming from SA. So yeah, it looks like the numbers are around 23% interstate, 2% overseas of that 25% tourist thing that we're coming. Interestingly, for interstate and international, It looks like the bed nights, that the amount of time they're spending in Adelaide seems to be averaging around 4 nights, which means there are people spending a lot longer, than, as well as some people just coming for the weekends.
And so how many visitors did you say you've had in the first 3.5 months?
Yes, 700,000. So
that's
2% of that is a lot of international visitation.
It's still a lot of people. I was just getting my calculator to work that out. Like, that feels like about 14,000 people, which is
exactly right.
And potentially, like you said, it's higher, particularly with locals purchasing tickets for visitors and things like that. So I think most events would just love to have 14,000 international visitors come to their, it'd be a rare event that does that in South Australia.
Yeah.
So that's a small percentage, but it's a big number, my
yeah,
friend.
and look, what I would say is anecdotally, yeah, and a lot of the really fun stories are just the people you meet in and around the gardens. Yeah, on the first day we had a couple came from Rotterdam, and it was in many ways like they were saying the script I would have written to give to the tourism minister. They had been thinking about an international holiday for a while. They'd been thinking about Australia, and then they saw that Chihuly was in Adelaide and decided that their holiday would be Australia, it would be Adelaide, and they would time it to arrive on the opening weekend of Chihuly. We've had people from Seattle,
Wow.
where Chihuly is based, and there's a permanent Chihuly gallery in Seattle, but there are super fans that say, "Oh, yeah, but I've seen that. I want to see what he's doing in Adelaide." And so there absolutely are fans because you've got a global artist with a major following, and of course the Chihuly Studio have been promoting our exhibition on their website and through their newsletter, and it's the super fans that subscribe to their newsletter. So there are people that will follow Chihuly around and go to where he puts on a show.
Mm, mm. No, it's really impressive. Unless anyone has any other comments, I could keep talking. I love hearing about this, and I just love the fact that you've done something that's really innovative and not just done a great piece of innovation, but then the execution you've done around it has, with so many partners and collaborators, has just been first rate, Michael. So I just want to congratulate you on that and thank you for that. And I think that the tourism industry, we understand that, um, and as Julie said in her comment, that, one of the key mantras for us is stay another day, spend another dollar. And
Yep.
at its, Chihuly is extending people's stay, and it might be just to have lunch in the city rather than head back home, to wherever they're
Yep.
going as a local visitor or whatever. But you can't measure that, the benefit that yes, it's creating some international visitation. Yes, there's obviously a big number of interstate visitors. Yes, there's some ticket events, but the at its very base, it is extending people's stay. They are spending another dollar, and that benefit has for hundreds, if not thousands, of businesses in our state. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And look, it also, I emphasize, this was actually also the fact that Adelaide is able to put this on and respond so well to it across the community. It could very easily have been a project we did in the gardens that didn't really have links outside, and it still would have been successful. But the scale of the success, I think, comes from that whole of city engagement, and I think that's a testament to the fact that events like this do work in Adelaide, and in fact, the scale of the city really helps them work, and that's something that I think, in terms of thinking about the way in which we talk about Adelaide outside the state, is absolutely something worth sharing.
Yeah, I know, and with that perfect size city, and I think when we collaborate and we all get around, whatever the event is, it always ends up being a huge success. Jam Factory have just asked a question about airport. Um, um, Australia's favourite airport, which happens to be in Adelaide.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what you're doing there.
Oh, delighted to. That was, again, one of the first sponsors to come on board was Adelaide Airport, and they provided some support for the exhibition, but also a huge amount of support in terms of advertising real estate at the airport. So we were able to do a kind of Chihuly takeover of the airport, really, and to have visitors to Adelaide walking past, massive photographs of the gardens, massive photographs of the Chihuly works, a Chihuly work actually on display at the airport, which the Chihuly studio, there was a lot of negotiating with the studio to let that happen. And but the power of that partnership got that over the line as well, and the fact that the airport were very flexible and able to work with the Chihuly studio for us to mount a display there. Meant that as soon as visitors stepped off the plane, they got a sense that this was the thing to do in town. And and in fact, the day in which the Chihuly studio director of exhibitions was arriving in Adelaide for the installation, as she came through the airport, they were putting up these massive signs saying Chihuly in Adelaide, which was really cool. So to see that and to have the airport support it so enthusiastically was brilliant. So yeah, massive shout out to Adelaide Airport for their support, and also that we got support from Nine and the advertiser, which again, obviously we were buying advertising, but they provided so much more support beyond what we purchased, which has really allowed us to project that both within the state, but also interstate as well. So getting really good media partners on board and supporting and promoting, running competitions, it's all part of that, again, that ecosystem of collaboration that have made it as big as it is.
No, that's wonderful. And yeah, I guess I don't know how your gardeners are feeling. We've twice as many or three times as many people coming through the place. They're probably looking for a little bit of respite come a few months' time. But that's a
Yeah,
whole nother conversation, Michael.
it is. It is. And look, wear and tear on the garden is obviously, there are, what the team has done, again, it's working with the Chihuly studio, is we've by and large kept a lot of the visitor walking trails to the concrete surfaces. So there are some areas where you've got to cut across the lawns to see the works, and you can see, yep, they're being kind of a little bit worn. But we've kept visitors away from walking through any of the really sensitive areas. Lawn can be repaired and is being repaired on a regular basis. But we built the night trail where people are following a trail to very, very much take advantage of the hard surfaces and preserve the garden as much as possible. And this is one of those considerations. When you do an event in a botanic garden, it's something you need to be very mindful of.
Well, and you probably have people interacting with the garden that have never interacted with gardens
Exactly.
before,
Yeah. Yeah.
as you
True.
develop this new audience opportunity.
Yeah. But also, because each of these works are so massive, they've required new plantings around them as well. So, in fact, I think we've added something like 3,000 or 4,000 new plants to the garden because of Chihuly, and a number of those will absolutely be retained for future use in the garden. They might be moved around, those that we can move. But yeah, there's a net increase in botany as well because of the exhibition. So it's about making the most of it.
Thank you so much, Michael, for sharing with us today. Thank you for being so candid with us about your experience. And again, congratulations on the success that is continuing at Adelaide Botanic Gardens.
Absolute
Um,
pleasure.
after today's session, thank you again, Michael. After today's session, as I said, we will send an email follow up with the recording and with the information that we've promised through the session. So again, we'll be doing it in conversation. Please enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
See you, Michael. Thank you.